2024 campaign is sticking with the hits, even though the hits have clearly been played out. When asked what Trump's strategic campaign messaging would be to reach the younger generation, specifically the millennials and Gen Z, Trump said, "Make America great again."
My name's Ashton. I'm the president of the Palm Beach County Young Republicans.
Very impressive. Very
Yes.
good. Wow.
Yes. So,
Good.
as the club and as young people, what is the strategic campaign messaging to reach millennials and Gen Z?
Well, I said, I have one little phrase that I think became the most powerful phrase in the history of politics and maybe in any country. You know what the phrase is? Make America great again.
He also said that he didn't need to go over the details of what Make America Great Again means because he's been going on about it for years. But even when he first rolled out the slogan for his 2016 presidential run, the slogan which, by the way, he took from Reagan, there was confusion at the time as to what point in American history Trump was even trying to get back to. No clarification ever came, of course, and his most ardent supporters never pressed him for any. Presumably, Trump was referring to maybe the 70s or the 80s or maybe even the 50s. Either way, nostalgia for those eras will only get you so far with the younger generations because they weren't there for them. I don't want to go back to the 50s or the 70s, and I don't want to go back at all. Time doesn't work that way, assuming time is real. It moves forward. Any kind of regression is counter to natural processes. Sure, you can make an argument for cyclical patterns that repeat throughout history, but at a certain point, there is no going back. Technology has changed, demographics have changed, the country has changed, and the world with it. If the United States goes backwards, we get left behind. The conservative party of Trump is no longer conservative, which by definition means that they would like to keep things more or less as they are, protect and preserve the status quo because it works for them. Now they are fully regressive, living in a world where they have seen their power and influence wane, where they've seen their relevancy lessened, where they see their ideas and values no longer respected as they once were. They are stuck in a past that frankly didn't work for everyone. And in today's America, there's more of everyone else than there are of them.
It's a very scary situation.
It makes sense that the increasingly right-leaning Republican Party can't win a popular vote. It makes sense that the party is constantly taking steps to disenfranchise young voters and voters of color, making it more and more difficult for them to actually make it to polling locations. Just last week here in Texas, a Republican-backed bill was proposed that would ban polling locations from college campuses and universities, places that are full of young, educated people with incredibly diverse backgrounds. And if you look at the data, millennials and Gen Z are both more liberal and left-leaning than previous generations, with Gen Z slightly more left-leaning than millennials. Also, they're more racially diverse and more likely to be born to immigrant parents than older generations. Additionally, Gen Z is expected to become the most educated generation ever, eventually taking the title from the millennials. And while the millennials and Gen Z often get lumped together, there is one distinct and significant difference between them. Millennials remember a world before social media and before smartphones. They grew up in that world. Gen Z, for the most part, is comprised of digital natives. They have a different relationship with technology than any other generation before them possibly could. Some, I'm sure, would argue that that's a good thing, but others can and do argue that perhaps they're worse off for it. For instance, Gen Z struggles with mental health issues more than any other generation before them, and they're riddled with anxiety over current events and global issues. Now, some of that anxiety could reasonably be attributed to the fact that things are, relatively speaking, pretty bad now. But another factor is the fact that constantly being tethered to a smartphone gives you little rest from everything horrible in the world. Additionally, social media makes monsters out of all of us, ironically isolating us from society and dividing us from one another more than connecting us. Rather than driving empathy and encouraging compassion on a wide scale, it has the opposite effect. Another important distinction between the two youngest generations is that Gen Z grew up in a world where the threat of school shootings was incredibly real. When I was in school, in full disclosure, I graduated from high school in 2006, I was never worried about a school shooting, not really, and we certainly didn't do any active shooter drills. On top of living with that terror, Gen Z has watched right-wing politicians support gun rights over their literal lives, refusing to improve conditions for them lest the NRA lose some money over it. In Texas, our Republican governor has made it easier for people to get guns rather than more difficult, even amidst such high-profile mass shootings such as the Robb Elementary massacre in Uvalde, Texas. Within a year of passing a permitless carry bill in 2021, mass shootings in Texas have increased by 63%. Trump wants to make things great again. He had 4 years to do so, and whether or not he was successful during his single term as president really depends on who you ask. Still, he has never won a popular vote in this country. He won his first race because of the strange system that we've got, not because his ideas were predominantly popular with American citizens. And obviously, he lost his second race flat out. With many of the Trumpiest candidates also losing their midterm races to less extreme opponents, Trump's plan to stick to his script might not work out so well for him. But I'm not complaining. All right, that is it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Thank you.